At a wedding, my husband's family insisted I move out of my own home so his newlywed brother and wife could have it. It's tradition, they said. My husband handed them my keys and whispered, "Make it quick." I pulled out a second set of keys and said, "Oh, you mean this house?" Their faces dropped as security walked in. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. I mean, I knew my in-laws were entitled and had their own weird way of doing things, but this was another level. I, 33 female, have been married to my husband Dan, 35 male, for 5 years. We met at work, fell in love fast, and got married within 2 years. We had a good life, or so I thought. The house we lived in? Mine. Bought it before I even met him. My name was the only one on the deed. I paid the mortgage. I handled the bills. Dan contributed, but only toward shared expenses like groceries or utilities. This wasn't a secret. Everyone, including his family, knew the house was mine. Dan came from money, old, inherited, generations of wealth kind of money. I didn't. I worked my ass off for everything I had. His family didn't like that. They weren't rude exactly, but there was always this feeling that they were tolerating me. Like they thought Dan had made a mistake by marrying someone who actually had to work for a living. Over the years, I'd gotten used to the passive-aggressive comments. The "oh, you wouldn't understand. It's just a family thing" remarks. The little digs at my job, my background, my independent woman mindset. Yes, his mother said that. But I brushed it off. I wasn't trying to be part of their world. I just wanted a happy marriage. But then Ryan's wedding happened. Ryan, 30 male, is Dan's younger brother. Their parents adore him. He's the golden child who can do no wrong. So when he got engaged to Olivia, 28 female, it was a big deal. Huge wedding, over 300 guests, expensive venue in Napa. The kind of event where the napkins probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. I didn't care. I wore my dress, showed up, and played the role of supportive sister-in-law. The ceremony was nice. The food was good. Everything was fine. Until the reception. After dinner, when everyone was relaxing, my ML stood up and tapped her glass. The room quieted. I thought she was going to make a speech about the happy couple. Instead, she smiled and said, "As you all know, when the younger brother gets married, the older brother must pass down his home. It's tradition." I froze. The room erupted in cheers. People clapped. Olivia giggled and squeezed Ryan's hand. My FIL nodded approvingly. I turned to Dan. He was staring at his plate, shoulders tense. I waited for him to say something. To correct her. To tell everyone that, no, we were not giving up our home. But he didn't. ML continued, "We are so blessed that Dan and OP have agreed to continue this beautiful tradition. Ryan and Olivia will begin their new life in their new home, effective tonight." The cheers got louder. I laughed. Out loud. Because surely this was a joke. It wasn't. The shift in the room was instant. A few people laughed nervously, thinking I was joking. Ryan's smug expression faltered. Olivia blinked, confused. ML's mouth opened slightly, her eyes darting between me and the keys in my hand. Dan? He just sat there, completely frozen. Security approached, dressed in black suits, moving with quiet authority. They weren't random guys I just pulled off the street. They were hired professionals from the wedding venue. I had spoken with the event coordinator earlier that day, just in case I needed backup. Ryan let out a forced chuckle. "What is this?" I tilted my head. "Oh, I'm just making sure everything's quick, like Dan said." Olivia's voice went shrill. "We're family. You don't need security." I turned to them, my smile never fading. "This is my house we're talking about," I said slowly. "And you all seem very, very comfortable making decisions about it without me." That shut her up. But then ML stepped forward, placing a hand on her chest like she was offended. "This is completely unnecessary, OP. No one is forcing you to do anything. We are simply following tradition." I laughed, sharp and cold. "No, you're stealing." Ryan's jaw clenched. Olivia let out a dramatic gasp. Dan finally snapped out of his trance and stood up. "Babe, can we talk?" Alone. Now he wanted to talk? I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I married. The man I thought was my partner. And I realized something. He had never been on my side. Not once. He might have loved me in his own way, but when it came down to choosing between me or them, he had already made his decision. I ignored him and turned back to security. "Please escort these people away from me." They nodded and moved in. Ryan stepped back. "You're overreacting." "No," I said, "I'm reacting accordingly." Security motioned for them to step aside, but Olivia lost it. "You can't do this to us. We have nowhere to go." I arched an eyebrow. "Oh, so suddenly you need somewhere to go?" I thought this was all just tradition. Her face went red. ML scoffed. "This is childish. You're acting like a petty little girl." That's when I dropped the real bomb. Oh, you mean the house I already sold? Silence. Dead. Thick silence. Ryan went pale. Olivia's eyes widened. ML actually staggered. Dan's face drained of color. You, what? I smiled wider. Oh, didn't Dan tell you? I looked at him, feigning innocence. The house was mine. My name. My money. My decision. I leaned in slightly. And a month ago? I sold it. Ryan stumbled back like I had hit him. You're lying. Olivia's mouth opened and closed, making no sound. Dan shook his head, desperate now. No, that's impossible. You would have told me. I shrugged. You never asked. ML clutched at her necklace like she was about to faint. But where are you going to live? And this? This was my favorite part. I slowly reached into my bag, pulled out another set of keys, dangled them in the air. Everyone stared. Dan's voice cracked. What is that? I smirked. My new house. That's when FL, who had been quiet this whole time, stepped forward. And everything took a turn. Up until this point, my father-in-law, FL, had been completely silent. He had sat there, watching, like this was some sort of game. But the moment I held up my new house keys, something shifted. FL cleared his throat, stepping toward me with an eerie calmness. Where did you move? He asked, voice steady but too controlled. I narrowed my eyes. Why do you care? Dan turned to FIL, confused. Dad? But FIL wasn't looking at him. He was staring at me. MIL, still recovering from the shock, placed a trembling hand on FIL's arm. This isn't important right now. He ignored her. Where's your new house? Something was off. Ryan and Olivia were too busy processing the fact that I had sold their so-called inheritance to notice. ML was flustered, clutching at her pearls like she had been personally robbed. Dan looked lost, like his entire reality was breaking apart. But FIL? FL was calculating something. So I decided to test him. I tilted my head. Take a guess. For the first time that night, FIL's expression changed. It was brief, but I saw it. His mouth twitched. A flicker of something dangerous flashed through his eyes. I had seen that look before. And suddenly, I understood exactly why he was asking. ML gasped as she put the pieces together. Tell me you didn't, she whispered. I smiled. Oh, but I did. See, months ago, before I had even decided to sell my house, I overheard FL talking about a property he had been trying to acquire for years. It was his dream home, a stunning estate right on the waterfront. The kind of place people fought over. But the deal kept falling through. The owners wouldn't sell to him, no matter how much money he threw at them. And when I started looking for my new home, I found out that the owners were finally selling. So I bought it out from under him. For less than what he had offered. And I never said a word. Until now. FIL's fists clenched at his sides. That house was supposed to be mine. I shrugged. Guess you should have moved faster. ML screamed. You absolute snake. Ryan looked like he had been physically slapped. Wait, that means you didn't just screw us over, you screwed over Dad. Dan, finally catching up, turned to me with horror. Opie, tell me this isn't true. I smiled. Oh, Dan, did you really think you were the only one who could betray someone? FIL's mask slipped. For the first time, he looked furious. You don't know what you've just done, he said, voice low. Oh, but I did. Because FIL had secrets. And I had all the receipts. A hush fell over the reception hall. Every whisper, every clinking glass, every movement ceased. All eyes were on us. FL's expression was carefully controlled, but I saw it, the tight jaw, the clenched fists, the way his eyes darkened. I had just humiliated him in front of his entire social circle. And I wasn't done. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only the people at the table could hear. You keep talking about tradition, but let's be real, this was never about Ryan. This was about you, wasn't it? MIL gasped. Ryan and Olivia were still in shock, trying to process the fact that their golden future had just crumbled. Dan looked pale, like he wanted to be anywhere but here. But FIL? He didn't deny it. Instead, he smiled. Slowly. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, he admitted, voice low. ML turned to him, eyes wide. What are you saying? FL finally looked away from me and addressed the table. I was never going to let Ryan and Olivia live there permanently. That was just a way to get Opie out. He took a sip of his drink, completely unbothered. Once they moved in, I was going to have the property transferred into the family estate. Dan stiffened. Ryan's mouth fell open. Wait. What? Olivia's face contorted in rage. You mean you were never giving us the house? This was just some scam to get a better property for yourself. FL didn't even look at them. He was still staring at me. You outplayed me, he admitted, a little amused. I'll give you that. I could feel the rage radiating from Mil. You lied to us. You let me make a fool of myself, oh, please. Fil waved a dismissive hand. You really think I was going to let Ryan, who can't even balance a checkbook, own a multi-million-dollar home? Ryan turned bright red. Oh, Dad, you said enough. Fil's voice was cold. You weren't ready. Neither was Dan. You're all so concerned about what's fair, but fair doesn't mean smart. OP saw an opportunity. She took it. That's the difference between her and you. Mil snapped. How do you speak about our son that way? Her voice cracked, raw with betrayal. Fl set down his drink and finally turned to Dan, his firstborn, his legacy. The man who had spent his entire life trying to prove himself to this family. And what Fil said broke him. You were never meant to run this family, Dan. Dan staggered back, like his father had just hit him. What? His voice was barely a whisper. Fil's tone was matter-of-fact. You were a placeholder. I always planned for Ryan to take over. You were never strong enough to do what needed to be done. Dan's entire body went rigid. His face turned a ghostly shade of white. His hands trembled at his sides. Mil was horrified. We raised him for this. We sacrificed everything for, you raised him to be soft. Fl cut in, his voice sharp. He married a woman who outsmarted us all, and instead of controlling the situation, he let her win. I should have felt victorious. I had outmaneuvered them. I had exposed them. I had won. But when I looked at Dan, he was breaking. He stared at his father like a child who had just realized Santa wasn't real. Like everything he had believed in, everything he had worked for, had just been ripped away. I gave you everything, he whispered. His voice was raw, shaking. I tried to be the son you wanted. Fil sighed, looking bored. And that was your mistake. Dan's hands curled into fists. I thought he was going to hit him. But instead, he turned to me. You planned this. His voice was low, accusing. You knew this would happen. I exhaled slowly. I didn't plan this, Dan. But I knew how it would end. His eyes, those eyes I used to love, were full of something I couldn't recognize. Anger? Pain? Regret? Maybe all of it. Was I ever enough for you? He asked. I stared at him. You gave me away like a used toy, Dan. And now you're asking me if you were enough? He swallowed hard. I thought I was doing the right thing. I shook my head. No, you were doing what they told you was right. A long, aching silence followed. Ryan and Olivia were still reeling from Fil's betrayal. Ml looked like she was seconds from screaming. Fl had already moved on, checking his watch like this conversation had become boring. And Dan? Dan looked lost. Where do we go from here? He finally asked. And I realized he still thought there was a way to fix this. So I gave him my final answer. I don't know where you're going, Dan. I held up my keys. But I know exactly where I'm going. And with that, I walked away.